Never saw the hero who goes along with Diablo. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in a nation, flowing rivers and holy. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meet in our need. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God being the watchman of this nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meet in our need. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God being the watchman of this nation.
Welcome to everybody who's joining us tonight. Good evening, PS. Good to have you. All right. My fellow Ambalanders, welcome to my YouTube channel. This might be the first live broadcast I'm doing on YouTube. We are experimenting with innovation, and we are hoping that we find a settled platform through which we can communicate with our people. I want to thank our citizens on ground zero and those in the diaspora. I also want to send my best wishes to our fellow citizens in jail, our soldiers, the bravest and the finest of our time. I want to extend on behalf of all of us our gratitude for the sacrifices you are making. And I know we are deeply indebted in gratitude for all you do. It has been a tumultuous 7 years of persistent resistance. And I know that many people have questions about the trajectory of our struggle. I can say with certainty that the trajectory of our struggle is grounded on a very solid foundation. and we should be very optimistic. There will be shortcomings, there will be setbacks, but these are normal occurrences in a very bloody and difficult liberation struggle like ours. I have said we have not come thus far by chance. We have not come thus far because we have a just cause. We have come thus far through effort, investment in blood, in treasure, in planning, persistence, and determination. And to move to the next level will require a multiplication of the effort that we have invested so far. And I'm very optimistic that our desire to be free from the barbarians will give us the strength to overcome difficulties and challenges that are natural within a liberation struggle and those that are imposed by circumstances. So I ask each and every one of you to be resilient and to be steadfast. I've been around for so long, and I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm energized. As I said, I'm a stubborn optimist. I believe very strongly that sooner than later, we'll wave our flag triumphantly in honor of our resistance, those who have fallen, and celebrating the demise of the worst barbarians that ever entered our territory. We have to do this for those who've died, and we have to do this for ourselves and children yet unborn. I will be talking about a series of issues today, which are very important in our struggle. I will start with Momo. I know the past 4 months has been very difficult as far as Momo is concerned. Even the past 7 years has been extremely very challenging for our citizens in Momo and for our forces in Momo. Momo has almost been like a battleground, a conflict of ideas, ideals, and strategies and procedures. And it has been somehow messy from an outward perspective, but if you look at it from the inside, you know that some of the chaos perceived or real are fomented for external benefit. So far, Momo has been the headquarters of the Amazonian Defense Forces. It has been a place where our forces have demonstrated a lot of strength and sacrifice a lot in terms of blood. I also think despite some of the comments, some of the what I call attacks, the citizens of Momo, as we have seen in videos that have emerged in the last days, have been very committed to our struggle. Momo has been a place that elites have ruled with a firm grip, and they have subdued the civil society in a way that their exposure is only through these elites. And so to find the General Ivos and the General Efans, the General Sumangurus, being the ones in charge at this particular moment is something those elites can never come to grasp with. So we can understand the change in dynamics in terms of power differentials has affected, the society a lot. But what I want to say is that power belongs to the people. It is exercised at different moments by those who, through different methods, are given the opportunity to exercise that power. At this particular moment, Power is in the hands of our forces who exercise it in a functional manner through their activities in the defense of our people, in the defense of our honor, and in the defense of our land. Momo has been a battleground also of ideas. How do we move forward? What are the kind of ideas that should take root in Momo at this particular time and in the future? As I've said repeatedly, all of the ideas that we deal with at this particular moment are liberation ideas. They are wrapped in strategies and tactics, in policies and actions to strengthen Amazonians' ownership of places where our forces live and exercise power. What becomes in terms of governmental structures, in terms of policies of governance, will be determined during the period of transition. That will be a collective exercise that will translate into a constitutional democracy where power will be exercised by the future government of our country. And so we must make a huge difference between this liberation phase and the governance phase. All our efforts should be invested in ensuring that our forces are armed, that they are protected, and that they are strong enough to provide some semblance of protection to our population. That is the sole responsibility of anyone, a group, or a group of individuals who want to operate in any particular area, especially Momo. We've worked extremely very hard to strengthen the hands of our forces who face enormous obstacles, and we've treated each challenge and obstacle with a high sense of understanding of the consequences of any strategy that we put in place to overcome those obstacles. We've acted proportionately, knowing fully well that our actions can be exploited by internal and external enemies to sow seeds of division that will undermine our ability to control territory. This has not been because we are weak. It has been because we understand the consequences of instability that moves into period of transition and period of governance. We've seen such situations in South Sudan. We've seen the kind of autocracy that has existed since Eritrea became independent as far back as in the 90s. And so all the policies we put in place today, we have these situations in hindsight. So far, the lockdown called by our forces in Momo came to an end. The Guzang market was open yesterday, and we all saw the jubilations of our people. Being very grateful, we've watched other videos of our forces visiting with our population. And I think everyone who loves our country, who wants freedom, should continue to operate in a way that shows respect for this cohabitation between our forces and the population. Momo belongs to the people of Momo. They alone will determine, through a constitutional process, the kind of federal system that Amazonia will embody, that will serve their interests like the interests of other states. Surely those who govern Momo will come from Momo. But until then, the liberation process requires every Amazonian from every tribe, every state, to be able to make an investment in blood and treasure to make sure that every state, including Momo, is free. I condemn very strongly those who use tribalism as a foundation of their political position to instrumentalize our population, those who take pride in the fall of our forces. You can't be a nationalist and be a traitor at the same time. I ask the population of Momo to remain vigilant and to know that all those carrying arms are their children, and they must work hand in hand with the forces to ensure the collective survival and the self-preservation of the people of Momo. Let me move to my own state, Mezam. 2 days ago, there was a lockdown in Mezam. It was called by the generals of the brigades, the Amazonian Defense Forces, the 7 Qatar, the Black Mambas, the Buffaloes, and other forces. We have seen the fall of several generals in Mezam, as well as other states. There has been this constancy in the death of our soldiers. Sometimes what we don't know is soldiers have their private moments to mourn the fall of their comrades. They decided that because there were a large number of soldiers who were fallen, they were going to declare a day of mourning for these soldiers and to use that period to reignite a sense of patriotism in every Amazonian, and to make sure that the different activities we undertake will undermine the activities of traitors, blacklegs, and enablers who are to a greater extent responsible for the death of our forces. The ghost town was excellent. It went well. And we also realized that before then there were collaborators that were supposed to enter into the state of Mezam. And we used that opportunity to demonstrate power, control, and to show them that Amazonians want to be free. We have been working very hard to build bridges between the forces in Mezam. Mezam is the most densely populated state in our country, and it has been the battleground for all sort of schisms, whether it's the struggle for democracy, whether it's the struggle for the GC board, whether it's the struggle for our independence. Mezam has played a pivotal role. As I said in my audio the other day, Mezam should be ready to shoulder the burden of Amazonians in their struggle for freedom. And I can assure Amazonians that we are working very hard on a daily basis to make sure that the gains we are currently making in Mezam are sustainable and can be translated into battlefield victory and more commitment from our population. I remember General Spirito, General Rambo, General Laji, and all the other commanders who've given their lives so that Amazonia might yet be free. I also want to thank the people of Mezam for their commitment to the liberation tax. As you are aware, the liberation tax was instituted so that we eliminate multiple forms of commitment that have sometimes led to extortion, harassment, and even torture. Unnecessary roadblocks were put in place to mobilize resources for the resistance. Lack of accountability in these processes also engendered a scenario where they were fighting between different forces. The liberation tax is not simply an instrument for resource mobilization. It is instituted as an instrument to ensure there is accountability in the mobilization and use of funds, as a covenant between those who are in charge carrying guns and those who are being governed, who are the population of our country. And so Mezam has been at the center of mobilization for liberation tax, and I'm very grateful. I know other states are doing a lot. I call on our people to remain committed to the liberation tax. That's the only way we can mobilize enough resources to increase our manpower, increase our armory, and to ensure the survival not only of our forces, but of our population. This is a struggle for our very existence, for our self-preservation, and it requires every single Amazonian to be dedicated in one form or the other. I also want to let our people know that when lockdowns are called, it is important that they are respected. It's not simply a tool that imposes cost on our population, but it is a tool that projects Amazonia's situation to a wider audience. It is a tool that is used to shame the enemy. Lockdowns are very important political tools that are used to undermine the legitimacy of the enemy in our country. And I think 24 hours of being at home wouldn't cost you anything. So I encourage our population to see such lockdowns as moments of collective resistance, moments of collective memory, in remembrance of those who have died and those who are locked up in 2 square meter spaces in prisons across Cameroon and Amazonia. It's a sacrifice we are obliged to make. It's a sacrifice which sends a very strong message to those who live as IDPs, those who live as refugees, those who are locked up, that someday, sooner than later, our country will be free. On the 1st of May, there will be a lockdown. I'm still looking at it very keenly, but there will definitely be a lockdown territorially against any celebration of Labor Day that is basically instrumentalized by Yaoundé to project its power over Amazonia. Amazonians in the large majority are unemployed. They have no health insurance, they have no social services to lean on. They basically survive through subsistence. And there is virtually nothing to celebrate in terms of labor. Amazonians in labor are slaves, are treated worse than slaves in modern times have been treated in their own country, where the enemy has carved out mini cities in Victoria to house expatriates who are working, doing lucrative jobs, earning high salary in Amazonia. Companies that are making a huge amount of money and are not plowing back the profit in the building of schools, hospitals, or recreational centers for our children. Amazonia is simply an experimental space where businesses come to reap Amazonians of their opportunities, mass capital flight due to the exportation of capital that is made in Amazonia. Amazonians are basically not employed. Thousands and thousands of Amazonians are going across oceans, including into La Republique, just to earn a living. So at this particular stage, there is nothing we will be celebrating until the independence. On the 20th of May, which falls on Country Sunday, the entire territory of Amazonia will be on lockdown. And that lockdown will be enforced. We're sending a very strong warning to Ndonga and Manton, to Fako, and other places that have allowed themselves to be instrumentalized by the enemies of our independence and our freedom to project Cameroon's interests in our country. For since 1972, they have forced you to carry their flag on a day they call National Day. It's a day of dehumanization. It's a day of complete takeover of Amazonia. It's a day of shame, which you've been coerced to celebrate and to honor the tragedy of the loss of our country. We've spoken about this many times, and I think Amazonians should have an instinct already. Amazonians should have an instinct that it's a disgrace that we have to remind ourselves every time that the 11th of February, the 20th of May are days of national humiliation. They are days that the enemy basically took over our territory and is coercing us to celebrate. These are days we should sit around the table and speak to our children, tell them our true history, and why these days must be rejected with every ounce of energy that we have in our system. And in the last 7 years, thousands of young Amazonians have been killed in the defense of an independence that was simply given away without resistance. Why should this generation spill its blood this way for a struggle, for a case, for something they were not responsible for? Why should young men carry rifles to go on the street to enforce ghost towns? I think it's pathetic that we have to do these explanations time and again. These barbarians have murdered, they've created concentration camps, they've kidnapped our people and locked them up, murdered some in jail. They are raping our girls. They are going around triumphantly as though they own our land without any sense of guilt. I think Amazonians should be up in arms, not only because of the notion of independence that should provide us the container within which we should exercise every other right, but simply because of their disgust for these people. Don't forget, these are people who give them political asylum when they were fighting their own national struggle against France's presence in their country. These are people who fed them the past 60 years. And what they've given us in return is cemeteries, pain, wailing, schools dismantled, industries closed, opportunities shipped over to Cameroon. In return, they brought gendarmes, the bees, the armies, murderers and killers. On the same Thursday, we had a lockdown in Mezam. The French ambassador was in Bamenda. He hid himself at upstation Bamenda with other collaborators and traitors, murderers, and barbarians. We don't care about foreign ambassadors visiting Amazonia. It's not problematic for us. But it's dangerous. It's an insult. It's insensitive for the French ambassador to visit Amazonia on a day of lockdown, and he's talking about decentralization. Every 5 years, the French have elections. Sometimes a change of president through transparent elections. They have a system of accountability to an extent. They have a system of governance that, takes care of the sick, the old. Yet the French have been in Yaoundé for as long as they've owned Cameroon. They've been around with the same people for the past 60 years. Unelected tyrants, looters of treasury, murderers of their own people. They have never uttered a word of condemnation. Massacres upon massacres in our country. Thousands of villages burnt down, scorched earth policy. People kidnapped for political opinions, passed through kangaroo trials, dead in the night, and given life sentence. Not a word. In the midst of a bloody war, it's an abuse for the French to move into our territory, considering our pain and suffering, and talk about decentralization. I send a strong warning to all ambassadors. This is our story. It's not your story. This is our story. Allow us to tell our story. We are victims of your own machinations. We are victims of your conspiracies. While our forebears, including my own dad, were shipped to fight to defend your own territorial integrity and self-determination, you denied ours. And even after 60 years, considering the pain being imposed by the looters and butchers which you've supported, you still lack sensitivity. Shut the hell up if you have nothing to offer. We don't want to reach the level where we will ban all ambassadors from ever entering Amazonia. We can do that. But we are conscious that the struggle for self-determination and independence is a struggle also for integration within the international system. And we conduct ourselves with that in mind. And we require from every foreign embassy, from every embassy that operates in Cameroon, to be conscious of why so many of our people have been killed, to be sensitive of why so many thousands of them are in jail. You have been incapable of forcing La République de Cameroon on a table of negotiation. You've lacked the power or interest to be engaged constructively, to send a message to these butchers and looters that you will no longer tolerate 60 years of anarchy. Why would you do that? You wouldn't. Because of economic interests, geopolitical and strategic interests. Ambazonia's emergence will put an end to this anarchy. Let me also inform our people, and this was the last point I wanted to talk about, but let me talk about it now. I know sometimes you're wondering, the AGOC will be having a meeting tomorrow. We'll discuss this in details during the meeting. I want to tell you that La République is desperate. Desperate. So the approach of violence has failed. It has been incapable for them to exercise control and to translate any level of control into political legitimacy. Totally collapsed. Political legitimacy defeated. Military occupation on the back foot. And so we must realize where we are. I know you want to see this through the prison of excitement, battles here, battles there. No. Our forces are dogging. They have control. There are places where we are weak. That's normal. We have a plan on how to retake those places. I was discussing one of such plans just in the last 1 hour, being overseen by the Vice President of the AGOC and the Chief of Staff. For every part of our territory that we have become weakened, we have a plan. And so be rest assured that our block by block strategy to undermine the ability of the enemy to reinstitute political control is working. So you must know that Cameroon is very desperate. It is doing a lot of backdoor activities. We're watching keenly. And we know that other Amazonians are taking the bait of their desire to undermine international mediation and to translate the Amazonian resistance in kind of a domestic agitation that can be adjudicated through a domestic process. We've made it absolutely clear that this is an international conflict and that our experience in the last 60 years on little domestic issues has given us the knowledge to be able to put down a firm position that there will either be outright battlefield defeat of the enemy or there will be capitulation through negotiations that will be internationally mediated. So anytime you get to listen to whispers and gossips about Cameroon's desperation, you know that there is no smoke without fire. But everything is working in Amazonia's favor. I think what is required of Amazonia is a consistent posture, a war posture. Cameroon is not a country where you demonstrate weakness at any level. It's a violent state, believes in bribery and corruption and excessive use of force. And every Amazonian must know we are not in this armed resistance as a game. It is an armed resistance for the very survival of the Amazonian people. And we're dealing with a state that has never negotiated. We're dealing with a state that does not understand negotiation. We are dealing with a state that has virtually no compunction on human life. And for us to survive, we must be well armed to overcome all of their machinations on their way to eventual defeat. So we are working extremely, very hard. We also participated in international conferences. We have others coming up where we are pushing our case in a way that people can understand it. The international community is interested in stability. It is interested in ensuring that there is this de-escalation. Amazonia's interest is building its capacity against an avowed enemy whose only tool of operation is violence. And so we must be prepared as a people to survive, even if we must also be prepared to bat our way in boardrooms on the various issues that are at stake. But be rest assured that there will be nothing, as I said, short of full independence, no compromise on any issue, peripheral or core, as far as our existence as an independent state is concerned. So I just want to assure everybody that we are working extremely very hard to make sure that we stabilize our image internationally. We are facing a lot of internal agitations. Those agitations are sometimes expression of frustration, which sometimes give a perception of chaos and division. And that is taken by the enemy to demonstrate to the world that Amazonia is chaotic, divided. No, we aren't. For 8 years, we have shown that we can control Batibo. For 8 years, they know where we are. We've not been uprooted. For 8 years, we fought in the largest urban city. We are still there. We fought in Bafut. We are still there. We've been fighting in Bui. We're fighting in Fako. We've been fighting in Meme, in Dian, in Kope. So it's not some form of resistance that is not organized, that can simply be undermined through rhetoric or through deception. It has not worked for the past 60 years. And I think our resilience and our patience and our strategies put together will not only bankrupt La République du Cameroon as we have done, it will undermine its international credibility and reputation as a member of the international system. My fellow people, I really want to thank you all for being steadfast. I will enjoin you to recommit and to be part and parcel of this journey. It's difficult. As you can see, I'm growing gray, very old. But if there is something I feel good about, is I am part of a generation that has rewritten the history of Ambazonia in an entirely new chapter, not as a footnote of history, but as the main chapters in a book written by Ambazonians and owned by Ambazonians. And you should take pride in that. Trust me, there is nothing you will leave behind. For all of you who grew up down there, if they ask you about Nanga, what do you remember? What is the legacy? If they ask you about Kilo, Pa Taim, all of the big names that you knew, the business infrastructures that they ran, I'm definitely very sure that the story of this generation will be written differently. Defiance, resilience, steadfastness against one of the modern savages of our time. There will be elections in Cameroon next year. Consequential elections, not only for Cameroon, but for Amazonia. The first thing I like to say is this. This election will not take place in the 43,000 square mile territory of Amazonia. I have just seen, I think, a picture or a video of Mr. O.C., who claims to be the chairman of the SDF, campaigning in Boya. Any campaign within our territory is a declaration of war. Any attempt to legitimize a bloody enemy on the blood of our people is an affront to the dignity of the Ambazonian people. And we will treat this as a declaration of war. The next thing I'd like to say is this. During the Eritrean War, Eritreans built pseudo relationships with patriots of Ethiopia to undermine the cohesion of the Ethiopian regime and to make sure that both peoples can be free. For the past 7 years, we have never seen a single demonstration within Cameroon against the war, against the genocide in our country. We have not seen the kind of outcry that you would expect from a people whose children are burning down our villages. At the beginning, they denied there was a problem. They called us 2 cubes of sugar. They attacked our integrity. They tried to minimize the consequences of the occupation of our land. As time went by, the brutality of the enemy, which was very, very public, captured by reputable international organizations, was available for Cameroonians to be outraged. We didn't see the kind of outrage that was necessary. No sympathy from Cameroon. We watched the conduct of Cameroon parliamentarians, including those who came from Amazonia. Apart from a few brave voices that spoke for us, that raised the plight of our people, absolute nothing. But one of the most troubling declarations came from Mr. Kamto, a legal mind who should be familiar with the legal texts, with historical facts about the illegality of Cameroon's presence in Amazonia, or at least the right of our people to external self-determination when confronted with a situation where a current occupying state is unable to protect the rights of our people. Every legal person, that's 101 law, understanding international treaty, understanding customary law on the question of a people's right to exist and to establish a government over themselves, to protect their human rights and their dignity. Mr. Kamto lacked the political acumen to be able to understand that at this particular moment, it was unwise to make far-reaching declaration that will infuriate Amazonians and that will suggest aligning with the policies of brutality against our people. Since 1990, I have been on the political scene. I have observed the weaknesses of the constitutional republic that emerged from 1972 through 1996, 2008 constitutional amendments that entrench executive powers over both the judiciary and the legislature. Elections in Cameroon is not about fairness of the process. It's not about registration to vote. It's not about access to the ballot. It's about securing the victory. You may wonder why I'm addressing this issue, but this issue is very important. It's very important. Because next year, we may be facing a new regime in Cameroon, or the continuation of the old regime. It is important for me to send a very strong message to anyone campaigning to take over the presidency of Cameroon. The position of Amazonia for independence is not subject to negotiation. So anyone who is contemplating and postulating and propagating the falsehood that the question of occupation, denigration, torture, and violence is as a result of bad governance, of political actors who are insensitive, is making a fundamental error. It's a structural issue. It's a historical issue. It's a long-term issue of the French Empire. Power is never shared. Whoever becomes president of Cameroon will continue in the same vein as the last two presidents. They will continue using violence. They will continue the hegemony. They will continue to propagate the falsehood that we were one and some white people came with a big sense. They will deny the truth, which is quintessential in the resolution of conflict. They will refuse to recognize us not only as a people, but our inalienable right to external self-determination. So anyone contemplating power in Cameroon must know two things. One, make no attempt to enter the territory of Amazonia to campaign in a land that is flowing with the blood of General Alaji, the Spiritus, General Efang, and others who have fallen in the name of the independence of our country. Second, the posture and position of Amazonia will remain unchanged. For any regime that is thinking otherwise, that wants to embrace the reality of the situation and the future, they know that you will have the understanding of Amazonia in taking power. But there are a couple of things that they must understand to overthrow the BR regime. There are just a few things you need to do. As I have said, elections in Cameroon is not about transparency of the registration process, the voting process. It's not about an independent electoral commission. It's not about access to the ballot. All of these things weren't there on the 11th of October 1992. Yet, Mr. John Frundi defeated Mr. Biya. He failed to secure the outcome. The legislative elections in 1997, the CPDM was still vanquished. The opposition failed to secure the outcome. One moment. So, to the opposition of Cameroon, there are a few steps, a few things you need to do to demonstrate your seriousness in opposing the status quo. There must be clarity in your posture. There must be clarity in your determination and in your structure. Any credible opposition to the BR regime in 2025 must begin by setting up a shadow government whose sole responsibility will be to secure any victory at the ballot. And that shadow government must demonstrate its preparedness to defend any victory of the regime, any victory of the opposition. That shadow government must, at this particular moment, be able to recognize the right of the Amazonian people to self-determination. It must project strength. It must project a sense of purpose and commitment to even an armed resistance in the protection of any outcome that it thinks it must have gotten. What I can tell the Amazonian people is this: there is no organized opposition within Cameroon with the features, with the policy orientations, with the determination, and with the aspiration to institute a structure that will overcome the violence and the anarchy of the Biya regime. And for any credible opposition against Mr. Biya to be able to win the support of the Cameroonian people, it must demonstrate immediately that it is strong enough, it is powerful enough to confront the viciousness of the Biya regime and to be able to fight the Biya regime in securing victory. Without that, everything they are doing today is an adventure. For us Amazonians, we have factored the election period in Cameroon into our planning. As I said, since last year, we've set up a working group to look into any eventuality. What happens, there are a couple of scenarios that we've been looking into. The North, Far North, Adamawa scenario, the Ngongo, Chantal Biya scenario, the Frank Biya scenario, the Center-Southeast axis scenario, and the opposition scenario concentrated in part of the center, littoral, west, and part of the triangle of the north. We factored all of these scenarios. What if one happens? What do we expect if suddenly the center-southeast consolidates power? What will be the reaction of the Adamawa North and Far North? We do not expect any reaction from the littoral western axis because of the docility and lack of preparedness, except the current leadership is going to demonstrate its preparedness with the kind of structures that will show its population that it is ready. What if there is a total change of government, and who takes over will determine the kind of policies we are anticipating? If the Ngongo axis takes over, we are expecting the continuation of the war in the most ferocious way possible. That is the axis of violence, and those are the axes that benefit from the war. What if suddenly Frank Biya takes over? You would expect overtures. You would expect a kind of a positive tone, but it will not meet the expectations of the Amazonian people. Whatever scenario unfolds in Cameroon between now and the elections of 2025, the posture of Amazonia will be strengthened by how prepared we have been in terms of armament, in terms of using any possibility of chaos in Cameroon to take more territory. And should there be any negotiations, we know we are negotiating in a very short period of time from a position of strength. Preparedness is key. And my people, we've got 1 year where we can have total control of our land, or we can continue in a long-term war if we are not prepared. I have analyzed these situations so that we understand what is at stake, what we are observing, what we are planning, what we are anticipating. In a nutshell, there may be a shift in the political dynamics in Cameroon between now and next year. That will also bring in international actors in a way that might strengthen those who have taken over power or might weaken them. Either way, Ambazonia has to be prepared. So my fellow people, as I said in one of my speeches, I think I was in Washington, your freedom is in your hands, and it shall be won through a very, very difficult battle, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. What Cameroon is trying to do now, through different political machinations, is to silence the gun in Amazonia with the hope that it can calm down this front should the northern axis rise up in resistance. We understand that correctly. That is why our response is more arms, more resource mobilization, more consultation with our forces. My fellow citizens, thank you very much. Tomorrow we should be meeting to discuss a wide range of issues, including the residence obligation law. We are moving systematically, making sure that we don't make mistakes, that even if we make mistakes, they are not consequential. Our struggle will have a perception of division. You must come to the realization that certain public statements are based on frustration. My leadership will continue to do more consultations with the forces on the ground. Most of the political actors in the diaspora at this particular moment are irrelevant. We will continue to consult with forces across the territory to ensure that we can sustain the resistance. At the appropriate time, every Ambazonian, dead or alive, will be part of the process of determining the future of our country. God bless you all.
the Amazonian, special loyalty. Praise to our Savior who granted us our freedom. Allegiance to the hero who called the lonely diablo. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in a nation, flowing with earth and holy. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom, usually repent in our need, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom, usually repent in our need, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation.
We've come here to tell the United Nations that the land they mortgaged to Cameroon will be recaptured by the brilliant people of Ambazonia.
Right! Yes!
That the complicity they had with the United Kingdom will be dampened. That your spirit, the indomitable spirit that has led you from your homes right here to this plaza, will not be extinguished by the banality of evil installed in our homeland. That the spirit that has awakened from the dusty street of Mutengene to the alleys of Bamenda will not be squashed by the brutality of Cameroon, the complicity of the United Nations, and the utter silence of the United Kingdom. For the blood of our people spilled for those who've gone before us. We stand like valiant soldiers to lay our lives to ensure that their blood wasn't spilled in vain. That they didn't die in vain. That the mothers who scream for their daughters, the fathers who are on shore where their kids are detained, wouldn't mourn in vain. I have come here as a soldier of the revolution. I have come here to assure you that this is just the first step to internationalize our struggle, to make the international community understand our pain, the pain of the mothers, the yearning of the fathers, and the doubts plastered on the faces of our kids. That the land, the 43 square meter land that we own, will not be mortgaged, will not be taken by any other country. That we are ready, that we will fight block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, until the day, as the last speaker said, we will be able to install a government in Boya, a government for the Ambazonians, a government by the Ambazonians, that is going to speak for us, fight for us, make treaties for us. We are not going to allow an alien dominating power from Yaoundé to decide our future, decide the curriculum of our education, decide which language we speak in our courts. And if the lawyer said no, right from here in New York, we send a message to Yaoundé that we are ready for the gendarmes, the big, and all the evil spirits that have been installed in our homeland. That we will give our life for a free Ambazonia. That if this country was built on the blood of people from distant places, we are ready as soldiers of the revolution to make sure that one day, just one day, we have a homeland to call our own, a place to dwell in peace, a place where we as a people can decide our destiny. You've just got started. It's a long journey. Liberation is not a walk in the park, and I want you to be ready. Do not believe soothsayers who say you are just going to have it on a platter of gold. It's going to be a hard struggle. But the footprints you leave here today will be followed by those after us. They will know we were here. They will know we fought for them. They will know we died for them. They will know we did our part. And so they will use the same rope map to be able to inhabit a free country. If that's the only thing we can give our children, let's do it for Mother Ambazonia. I want to thank your leadership. I want to thank all those who've made it possible for me to be here. Together as a people, we will fight together, go to jail together, so one day we may be free together. Come on.
Ambazonia Defense Forces, the vanguards of the Ambazonia War of Independence. Welcome to ACN.